All right, I'll look at the Minnesota Wild now that the trade deadline has passed. This is what we're working with going into the playoffs this year. Assuming they make it, but they should, I'd be horribly surprised if they don't make it. First line, a lot of these lines haven't changed. First line, Kaprizov, centered by Hartman with Zuccarello on the right wing. Second line, you got Marcus Foligno, centered by Joel Eriksson Ek and Jordan Greenway. Foligno and Greenway can play both wing positions, but Foligno's been a left wing pretty much the whole season. Greenway's been a right wing pretty much the whole season. And that goes back into prior years as well. Second and third lines can be swapped interchangeably. It depends on the night. Some nights it's the Foligno line is clearly the second line in terms of minutes played. Some nights it's the Fiala line that's clearly the second line with minutes played. So you kind of have a 2A, 2B line here. So we'll say the 2B line. You have Fiala, which is centered by Freddie Gaudreau and Matt Boldy on the wing. You got 20 goal scorer, 20 goal scorer. Should hit 20 goals, 20 goal scorer, 20 goal scorer, 20 goal scorer, 20 goal scorer. And Gaudreau's been scoring quite a bit lately. Fourth line's where it gets a bit interesting. Probably going to have Joe center it over Bukestad. He's younger. He's signed through next season. You want to develop him. You want him to kind of live up to his draft pick potential. Duhaime should be a staple on the right wing on that fourth line. Can provide some physical presence. Can provide some skill play every once in a while. He plays solid defense. And I think Delorier is going to be a staple on that left wing on the fourth line. We'll see, though. See how it plays out, how chemistry plays into that as well. You have Bukestad, Conor Dewer, and Victor Rask. Victor Rask has cleared waivers. He's in the minors right now, so not a huge deal. If you need a depth forward, Victor Rask is there, and he can score. He's just on a bad contract. Conor Dewer is a young guy. He's shown potential this year. You want to see him get those reps in at the NHL level, and he has partly throughout this season, but he might get sent back down as well. We'll see with that. I really like Dewer. I like his game. I think he'll grow, and his stats will tell you that every year he'll get better. Every team he's been on, his first year is always the worst year, and it just gets better and better. Like most players, some players just come in and have an instant impact, but Dewer usually starts off slow, and he'll build up. And there's been some flashes of greatness from him. So I don't know if he'll ever be a first-line center or a first-line winger. He could be, but at this point, he might go back to the AHL. We'll see what happens with that. I like Bukestad's game a lot. I'm a little sad he's kind of a scratch at this point, a healthy scratch. He might get swapped in for Jost every once in a while. He might play on the wing as well. He's a good depth forward to have. There's no doubt about it. Curious to see what happens in the offseason if they deal him or what's going on with that. But, you got one of the highest octane offenses in the NHL. You don't really want to mess with that too much, and they didn't, and it's a good thing. The only improvement I really could have seen being done is maybe replacing Ryan Hartman with a first-line center. The asking price for a first-line center is going to be very high, very high. Ryan Hartman's, he's having a career year. He's playing well. He fits well on that line. He obviously has chemistry with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. You just wonder what a first line, like an elite first liner who's like proven himself as a high point scorer, how that line would look and how that would affect the offense. But I like it, honestly. They don't need to rely on their first line for scoring. They do sometimes, but you have three very solid lines, and you're figuring out your fourth line, and your fourth line provides a different dimension. The Foligno, Eriksson, Greenway line, top of the league in defensive play. Excellent defensive group. All three of them play fantastic defense. So we'll see. That and Eriksson and Foligno can score. And Greenway can score. He has a lot of potential, and he has a lot of under-the-radar plays he does. He hasn't had great puck luck the past couple of years. At some point, you can't just say it's bad luck. But I like Greenway's game a lot. And yeah, so their offense is stacked. Their defense, solid as well. You got Goligoski and Spurgeon on that first line. Excellent top four. Second line, you got Brodin and Dumba. Brodin, I think, is probably the most underrated player in the NHL. He should be a first line defensive pairing, but you got Brodin, you got Spurgeon, you split them up. It's not really a big deal, but man, I can't say enough about Brodin. His skating, his defensive ability, his stick checking. He'll get gritty in the corners. He can provide a little bit of offense. Brodin is a fantastic value, great contract. Matt Dumba, too, is an excellent defensive pairing, definitely top four. And I think their top four is fantastic. The issue this season has kind of been their third defensive pairing, and it hasn't really been an issue. They've gotten good defense out of these guys. But, you got John Merrill, who I think is also very underrated. He's, at least this season, he's played out of his mind, so all the respect to John Merrill. He's earned his extension, his pay raise. I think he probably could have gotten more. I'm not going to complain as a Wild fan. I'd love to keep him at a low cost so they can afford him. And I just love John Merrill. I love his game. I love his grit. I love his mustache. You got Kulikov, who's been good. He's been up and down. He's had some good games. He's had some not so good games. Again, I don't have anything bad to say about any of these guys. Jordy Ben has probably been the most questionable defensive player on the team, but he's been a healthy scratch because of his lack of reliability, his lack of play in the defensive zone. He's a depth defenseman at this point. He can play and he can provide some defense for the Wild, and I'm sure they'll utilize that. But at this point in his career, at least through this season, he's a depth, the seventh defenseman. And they also acquired Middleton, who's a big dude. He's a big dude. He can drop the gloves. I think he's like 6'5". Young guy. He hasn't played many games, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the third pairing pretty often as well. I think we'll see Middleton, Merrill, and Kulikov swap every couple games or so. One of them will be a healthy scratch and go from there. The big acquisition, though, in net is Marc-Andre Fleury. Cam Talbot will be the backup. Cam Talbot, remember, was an all-star. Had some struggles with since his injury, and the past couple of games he's looked good, but he's made some excellent saves. He's been good, but it's you need him to be great going into the playoffs. You need him to be hot. So there's a little bit of a question mark. Kähkönen was great when Talbot was out, but as of lately, the past maybe month or so, his numbers tell you otherwise. He hasn't been all that great lately. So Kähkönen gets shipped to San Jose. I'm gonna miss Kähkönen. All the best to him. He's gonna get an opportunity to be the starting goaltender in San Jose, and I hope he wins it. He's deserving. At the very least, he's a backup at this point. He's still young, high potential, high promise. But I think he's gonna be a starting goaltender in the NHL. Soon. It just didn't work out in Minnesota, unfortunately. But you got Fleury to kind of lead you through the playoff race, and we'll see where it goes. Hopefully Fleury can steal a few games, and I don't know. I honestly, going into this season, I had high hopes for the Wild, but there were a lot of question marks. Kaprizov was on a 40-goal pace in his rookie year. Can he keep that up? He has. Ryan Hartman, can he center a first line? Is he a top 3 centerman? Is he even a centerman? He's not. He wasn't naturally a centerman. Has proven he can do so and is doing decent on faceoffs. He's not bad by any means. He's very good in the center position. Zuccarello having a career year. His numbers went up a bit last year with Kaprizov. You didn't know if that was sustainable for him, and he's proven that he's just a highly skilled guy. And so those questions are kind of answered right there. You had a little question with Jordan Greenway and his scoring, and it hasn't quite been there, but he's doing everything else on the ice right. He's hitting, he's being physical, he's agitating the other team a little bit. He's doing everything else so good. And his line mates are both 20-goal scorers. You can't really complain with his lack of offensive production at this point. He's driving to the net a lot. In recent games, he's been driving to the net more. He's been getting significantly better scoring chances than he has really the past couple of years. So that's a positive. Fiala got off to a rough start. He was very cold last year and just heated up and finished the year on a tear last year. So you had no idea what to expect from Fiala, and that was kind of an issue when discussing his extension, which will have to be revisited in this offseason. So that'll be fun for Billy Guerin. Centered by Freddie Gaudreau. What does Gaudreau bring? His stats in every season he's played would tell you he's questionably a fourth liner. He has fit in so well on this line. With Boldy coming up, it's just the chemistry. They play to Gaudreau's game. Gaudreau just fits in so well on that line. You didn't know what the rookies were going to give you. You have Boldy, who's supposed to make the roster to start the season, got hurt. You had Rossi, their touted top centerman prospect. He's looking great in the AHL. Still there. You didn't know who was going to be called up. What was the fourth line going to even look like to begin the season off? Duhaime has proven himself really. What did he come up in, like month 2 or something of the season? And he's been excellent. Nico Sturm was fantastic. You trade him out for a Jost. See where that goes. Delorier was just acquired. But Bukestad had flashes of greatness. He had some highlight reel goals. Dewer's young prospect who's come up. He hasn't produced too much offensively, but has been good, especially in a fourth line role. Victor Rask has played pretty well, especially playing on the fourth line. He's bounced around lines. They've tried to find a home for him, and it hasn't necessarily worked out. But nonetheless, he's a talented player. It's just he's in a rough situation with his contract. He's in a rough situation with this offensive powerhouse. So I don't think he'll be back next season for the Wild. His contract's up. I think he'll sign a cheaper contract elsewhere and be a mainstay in some organization. I also didn't mention Kailyn Addison on defense. He's a young prospect too. We knew he was about ready to come up. We didn't know how good he was, how much he was going to produce. Dude's still young. He's making mistakes at the NHL level, but that should be expected. That's not. It's going to happen. It happens to almost everybody once they join an NHL organization. So there's still a lot of promise there. And you didn't know how the defense was going to work or play out. You needed a first line pairing, and Goligoski has filled that so well. And there were a lot of questions like, why are you signing Goligoski to 1 year, $5 million? That's a lot. He's proven to be very worth it, and it turned out to be an excellent signing. Fooled me. I was not expecting Goligoski to be as good as he has. He's provided a lot of offense, but he has been so good and reliable defensively the past few months. There were some questions at the beginning of the season, but he's really figured out the Wild system and just fits in seamlessly. You know what you're going to get with Brodin. You hope Dumba can stay healthy. He has some health issues every once in a while, but your second line pairing isn't really an issue. Your third line pairing was, though. They signed Jordy Ben. They signed Kulikov. You have John Merrill coming in. You had no idea what that was going to look like. Are you going to have Addison in as a third line pairing? It's worked out. It's worked out well. Merrill's a steal. Kulikov's played pretty well. Jordy Ben hasn't worked out too much, but they go out and get Middleton, who, I don't know. I haven't really seen Middleton play too much. I noticed I've watched a few Sharks games this year, and I've noticed him on the ice because he has that sweet mustache. I love his look. I hope he never changes it. But, then going into the All-Star break, you thought you had your goaltending solidified. It was good. You're like, oh no, Talbot and Kakinen are both going to be due for, large pay raises. And then Talbot's injury happens. Kakinen's playing well, and you're like, well, Kakinen's our future. And then Talbot comes back, and they both play terrible. And you kind of have an issue of consistency at that point in net. And, again, I love the move addressing it by getting Fleury. I think that's huge. I wasn't expecting Fleury to be moved. So I'm really excited about this team. I predicted in about December-ish that the Wild would be in the Stanley Cup final. I did a little preview. I don't want to call it a preview. A little guess on who was going to make the playoffs around the All-Star break, and then I just did a quick playoff simulation, and I didn't have the Wild making it. I don't think, but I think they're touted for a Stanley Cup run. They just have to get by Colorado and figure out who they're going to meet in the Western Conference Finals, and if it's Calgary, it's going to be a tough matchup for the Wild. I think best case scenario they'll play the Kings, and the Kings play really well. They have a really good team, especially when healthy. But the Wild have played the Kings very well and had some very tightly contested, good matches this season. The Wild can play with the Kings no problem when healthy. I can't say that about a lot of teams, like, for example, the Boston Bruins. Can't say that about them. Even Colorado's had some issues with the LA Kings this year. Colorado Avalanche, who knows what to expect some nights. Some nights they'll blow you out, and then they'll go on the streak, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere you'd be like, oh, Colorado lost 6-1. What? So I don't know. Again, I really like this team going forward. I think Billy Guerin did a great job acquiring pieces they needed. You got a big enforcer type dude. You got a big enforcer type dude in Middleton. You got your goalie. You have a good team throughout. You didn't have to do much to tweak it. The asking price was probably way too much to replace Hartman. Hartman's on a good contract too. He is making $1.7 million. So you can't really beat that from a first line center. So going into the next few seasons when their cap is really constricted, that's going to be huge. They're going to keep the first line pairing their first line together through that, which is incredible. Foligno, Eriksson and Greenway are both signed to excellent contracts as well, so you're going to have that line. Fiala's a big question mark. Gaudreau, what is Gaudreau signed to? $1.2 million through next year. We'll see. I think Gaudreau pairs really well with Fiala, and then Fiala and Boldy pair really well together. Boldy is making a league minimum, close to a league minimum, $750 or whatever, $880K through next season. And you got a bunch of variables over here. Next season, they're going to have to worry about their defense a bit. Goligoski, they're not going to be able to afford to keep him at $5 million each year. So I don't know what you do then. Kulikov, Merrill, Jordy Ben, Addison all haven't slotted well into that number one pairing defensive role. Brodin's played on the first pairing for a couple games this year, but the rest of the defense is just so unbalanced. It doesn't work out for the Wild. That's going to be a huge issue. And then goaltending. They have a goaltending prospect. They have Hunter Jones. I don't know. They might sign a cheap backup next year. We could see Hunter Jones coming into the NHL next season, playing a few games, backing up Talbot. The assumption is Fleury doesn't re-sign with the Wild. We don't know that. We don't know Fleury's future. He's making $7 million against the cap this season. His contract's up. What does he sign a team-friendly contract next year? What's kind of the deal with that? So overall, I think there's still some question marks for next year, but I think they're in a very good position this year to make a solid run in the playoffs. And I'm excited. We'll see what happens. I'm really excited about this Wild team, and it's been a long time coming. If they can just get to the conference finals and kind of match that 0-3, if not exceed it, get to the Stanley Cup, that would be a dream. Let me know what you guys think. Are there any holes? What do you think? Obviously, Fleury is a huge thing, but looking forward, how is this team going to look? What pieces are they going to lose or have to trade off, or whatever it may be? So, all right, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it, and let's go Wild.